All right, hi everybody. My name's Anil Dash. I'm a New Yorker. How many people in the room are New Yorkers? All right, it's good. So I'm glad Web 2.0 is here, where we can support the best, most vibrant, most innovative tech community in the world, which is the New York City tech community. So I'm here today to talk about how we can carry on a great American tradition, which is learning from the experts. As Jen mentioned, my name's Anil Dash. I've been blogging for about 10 years at dashes.com. And the first expert I wanted to introduce you to is this man. How many of you know who this is? Can you see him? Do you know who this is? Probably not, right? It looks like generic clip art of a white guy in the 50s who's a scientist. Well, this guy is actually Joseph Licklider. He's important to all of us, even though he has a goofy name, because Lick, as his friends called him, has been called the Johnny Appleseed of computing. He had established a reputation through academia and his work in the private sector in the 40s and 50s that was so well respected that by the early 60s, when the federal government had realized there were going to be communications challenges facing the Department of Defense, they asked him for his expertise in how to develop new, more robust communication systems. In April of 1963, he wrote a memo to his community that he participated in that outlined a vision for an intergalactic computer network. That network became known eventually as ARPANET, the Advanced Research Projects Agency of the Department of Defense, and was the predecessor to today's Internet. And so what we had seen was this effort to ask for the expertise of an ordinary American citizen eventually led to the creation of the network that we all use today for sending cat pictures to our friends. And this is something that's very important to me because it affects my own history. Just 6 months after Licklider sent that memo, my father came to the U.S. because he was asked to help build the federal highway system. At the time, that was considered part of national security. And while Indian folks couldn't actually legally immigrate to the U.S. then, we would then, as now, make exceptions for people who were experts in areas that were important to the problems that face society. So in a very real way, the reason I'm here today is because we have a grand American tradition of truly respecting people who have expertise in their area of focus. And this is an important idea because there are spin-off benefits from this that we can't even anticipate. Later in his career, after his reputation had been established by helping create ARPANET, Licklider helped influence the creation of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Early in my dad's career, he's still making highways, but he got to spend a little bit of time helping build the foundation of what was to be an amusement park in the middle of a swamp in Florida. So the reason we get something like Sesame Street or Walt Disney World is because when experts help solve the problems for government, they help solve problems for society. And this also resonates with me because I come from a community of experts. As Jen mentioned, I've been blogging for 10 years, and back then you could actually count the number of blogs on the web. Right? You could actually read all of them every day. And more importantly, you could connect to everybody else that was creating them. So this is a picture from about 2002. It's two opposite angles on a single table of a bunch of us that got together in Austin, Texas for a dinner in March of 2002. And what we had in common at that point was we liked the web. We were pretty good at it. We were passionate about using it for social media. But from the people at this table, over the ensuing 6.5 years, they've helped create Flickr and Blogger and Twitter and Gawker and about a dozen other companies that have a collective market value probably over $1 billion. And the reason this happened is not because the food at that restaurant was particularly good, but rather because we had a community of people that were supporting and collaborating on each other's efforts. The startup of all of these is probably nearest and dearest to my heart. It's been 6 Apart. It's where I spent the last 7 years of my career helping with amazing projects. Just yesterday, they announced a new free version of TypePad, which is like real time for everything. It's bigger than 140 characters. But it's a company that's well established, well on its way, and as it's found solid footing, I realized this skill of connecting to a community of creators is something I wanted to bring to bear on a larger problem. How could we connect experts that we didn't already know? And how could we have them focus on something really meaningful, really significant? And so when I started to think about what was a problem or a project that was big enough to be worth tackling, I looked back at a blog post I wrote this summer about the most interesting new tech startup of 2009. In my estimation, it was actually the federal government of the United States. And it's not because they've built something really cutting edge in terms of technology so far, but they've shown a willingness to embrace Web 2.0 techniques and sharing data and open government with us using the web. And now we start to think about how much business and industry have been transformed by the lessons of Web 2.0, and we think, what if we could bring these lessons to bear in service of our country? And despite what our ego tends to think in the tech industry, the issue is not that we need to have more tweeting from the White House. I mean, that's an important part of it, but they don't need me to come in and help them with that. What actually we could do is help them learn the lessons that we've seen over the past half decade of Web 2.0's ascendance. And that goes by a lot of different names. You know, you can call these lessons different things. People call it wisdom of crowds or crowdsourcing, cloud computing. I like this term cloud expertise that's been batted around a little bit in Washington, D.C. But perhaps the biggest insight that I learned was from one of the people at that table down in Texas, Ev Williams, the CEO of Twitter today. He said to me years ago, every problem is a scaling problem. And at the time, it seemed like a really smart bit of wisdom from an innovator in the tech industry. But as I've thought about it more, this seemed like an insight into society's problems as a whole. If we can bring the right resources to bear and sufficient numbers of the right experts that we listen to in solving our problems, there really is an order of magnitude increase in the types of problems we're going to be able to solve. There's this insight that we can focus on that no matter how smart the policymakers are in our government, and they are brilliant, these are passionate people, there's always going to be more experts outside the Beltway in the rest of the country than there are in those offices making policy in the government right now. You know, the tactics thus far have been, we have a closed-door meeting with a half dozen people for an hour and say, well, we talked to the industry experts, now we know how to make good policy. But you and I all know that the web has changed the way that works. If I can ask my friends on Twitter, what pair of headphones should I buy? If I can ask, as a business person on Facebook, what's your response as a consumer of our product? Then why shouldn't the government be able to ask those same kinds of questions when shaping policy? So today I'm proud to announce that I've begun as director of a new independent nonprofit initiative called Expert Labs. And Expert Labs has as its mission connecting the government and policymakers to the expertise of our fellow citizens. And this is a powerful new idea. We have not had the opportunity to see crowdsourcing used to its fullest potential in service of creating better policy. Thus far, all of the social media efforts of government have been used to talk to citizens. But what if our government was using the web to listen to citizens? This is the step that's left to complete. And the way it's going to work is pretty straightforward. If we tap into the expertise of each community, there's enormous potential. So we're going to ask policymakers for their expertise in defining the questions that they need answered. I'm going to rely on all of you in the tech community for your expertise in making the tools that's going to get those questions answered. And finally, we're going to talk to scientists, researchers, and academics to provide the answers they're looking for. Because the answers are out there, and we have this opportunity where people are willing to listen to them. Now, we're fortunate. This current administration and really folks all across the government have indicated a willingness to listen to this kind of dialogue. I don't worry about technologists. We love solving these kinds of problems. But how are we going to get all these scientists to volunteer their time and energy towards answering their questions? How are we going to get them connected? Well, fortunately, Expert Labs has been created as part of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. These are the folks that publish the Journal of Science. Despite the fact that they are these brilliant, really wise people, they have very clearly recognized that not all the expertise can fit in any particular room at any given time. So they have access to hundreds of thousands of scientists that form the membership of their organization. And that's a resource we're going to try to tap into in answering these questions and solving these problems. We also are going to look at having a very entrepreneurial model of creating our technology. I look at things like the Night News Challenge and other efforts that have really taken the problems that face society and said, if we inspire the right entrepreneurs and the right technologists, they're going to come up with good answers. And so to support this effort, the MacArthur Foundation has really generously decided to invest in supporting Expert Labs. And as we get ready to launch, I think the most exciting thing about the potential of Expert Labs to me is that we are going to be able to tap into the great American tradition of listening to the experts and then enjoying a wonderful, surprising world of benefits that accrues from when we do so. I hope you'll join us. You can do it exactly as you'd expect. Subscribe to our blog, follow us at expertlabs.org. We're on Twitter as Expert Labs. And most of all, I hope you'll pay attention to the idea that Web 2.0 can serve a greater good than some of the more trivial things we've done. We can actually help make our country better. Thank you. Tweet.